and good morning, my beautiful people. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Soulful Wahine. I'm your host, Keholani. In today's episode, I wanted to start off by taking a quick moment to just go ahead and kind of weave together the last few episodes that I have posted and kind of just create a bigger picture for you folks, okay? So, a few episodes back, we talked about toxic love. We talked about our relationship patterns and things such as why we might accept less than we deserve and how we can shift into healthier dynamics. But here's the thing, choosing healthier doesn't always mean that we feel healthier. And since last week's episode drop, I've had so many of you reach out to me just one discussing how there was so many things that resonated, as far as with not feeling safe or even feeling unsure of how to bring back safety into our lives. And I even got a few messages from people saying things such as, like, all right, sis, I've chosen better, or, I'm in a healthier relationship now, but it feels weird or it feels strange. And it almost feels like I want to create chaos. As I stated earlier, in last week's episode, we touched on things such as nervous system safety and what happens when our nervous system is used to chaos, survival mode, and emotional instability. And so, with me trying to weave in the past few episodes and create a bigger picture for you folks, that essentially leads me to today's episode. Okay, and today's episode is so important because so many of you have requested that I touch on this topic because honestly, it explains the part that a lot of us are scared to admit. And that is, why does my body push away the very love that I prayed for? And so today, episode 15, it's about the physiology of love. It ties together your trauma, your attachment style, your cultural upbringing, and your body's memories. This is the episode where your patterns that we touched on from episode 11 finally make sense through the lens of what we discussed in last week's episode, episode 14. And so, again, this is where I weave it all together. I want to open today's conversation up with the fact that if you grew up around chaos, inconsistency, or emotional neglect, your nervous system learned how to survive, not to receive love. And healthy love is not boring. It's just something that honestly is unfamiliar to a body that associates safety with unpredictability. Now, let's touch on the question of the hour. Why do we push away good or healthy love? When we look at it from the context of, again, growing up in an unstable environment where chaos, inconsistency, and emotional stability was normal, our brains become wired to honestly prefer what is predictable, not what's healthy. Our brains are wired to avoid vulnerability because it can feel unsafe. Our brains are wired to stay alert for danger, even if there's no danger present. And lastly, our brain becomes wired to confuse intensity with intimacy. So, again, kind of just reiterating and touching back on things that I have mentioned in episodes 11 and 14. Okay? And if you're new here and you feel like some of the stuff that I might be referring to or touching on is confusing, go ahead, press pause on this episode, check out episodes 11 and 14, and then come back to this episode. And hopefully, after that, things will begin to make more sense through this lens. So, going back to why we push away good love. Again, when your nervous system has only known survival, peace and calm can feel like a threat. For those of you who know me, you know that I am big on neuroscience or just science in general, because I feel like when it comes to mental health, the neuroscience and the science behind things allows us to not only look at things through a scientific lens, but it also allows us to give grace to ourselves in moments where maybe we might be shaming or judging our behaviors. Okay? And so, in the context of the science behind why healthy love can feel foreign or boring, it's simply because trauma reorganizes our nervous system. So, hypervigilance now becomes our baseline. Cortisol and adrenaline dominate our emotional responses. Regulation begins to feel foreign, and secure behaviors such as consistency, reassurance, and honesty can trigger discomfort because our system is expecting the complete opposite. And so I want to throw out there that your body isn't sabotaging you in these moments, but rather it's protecting you based on old and outdated information. And so, again, like I said, using the lens of neuroscience, it allows us to look at these behaviors or look at the way that we are showing up through that lens of science rather than through a lens of shame and judgment. Does that make sense? Now, I want to touch on what are some signs that your body might be perceiving love as dangerous. Okay? So, you might get anxious when someone is consistent. You lose interest when things feel too easy. You overthink kindness. You wait for the real them to show up. You feel overwhelmed when someone starts to care about your feelings. Reliability makes you feel suspicious. You crave emotional intensity over emotional safety. And lastly, you sabotage the moment that things begin to get stable. And so this isn't a personality flaw and this isn't your nervous system working against you. No. Again, it's conditioning. Your nervous system is just doing what it thought was normal and what has honestly helped you survive and get to this point of where we're at now. There's no way, folks, that we can have the conversation about love and about romantic relationships and about how we show up in these relationships without talking about the correlation between childhood and how that shapes our adult connections. So, again, if you grew up with emotionally unavailable caregivers, if you grew up in a chaotic home where affection was inconsistent and there was grown-up responsibilities placed on you as a child, if you grew up with parents who loved but didn't emotionally support, or if you grew up with a culture of silence, toughness, or don't talk back, your nervous system learned that love is unpredictable and that I must stay guarded in order to protect myself. I want to touch on the cultural piece now because, again, as a Polynesian and Black woman, I feel like being multiracial, it allows me to have a lens and bring a certain lens to my clinical work. So I want to make sure to be able to speak on the cultural layer of the Polynesian experience. For many Polynesian women, emotional expression was not encouraged, meaning we were not taught or shown how to express our emotions. We were not taught how to set boundaries. We were not taught how to essentially communicate effectively. For a lot of us, love was shown through sacrifice and not through softness. Affection and validation were limited. Many of us were expected to tolerate more than we received. We weren't allowed to really question disrespect, and we learned to normalize emotional instability. And again, your nervous system is not broken, but rather it is reacting to generational patterns. And that's another piece that I want to touch on, folks, is for many of us, either we are first generation or our parents are first generation. And when we can take a step back, when we can look at how our parents were raised, at how our grandparents were raised, and just how essentially nobody knew any better, or no one was taught any better or any different. And so that cycle of how we handle things and how we discipline our children and how we, go about having emotional conversations, all of that was passed down, or for lack of not passed down, And so I feel like when we can step back and really look at the generational layers and really look at the fact that so many of our parents were not parenting from a place of connection, but rather from a place of survival, it can help us again to understand, like, okay, this is why this pattern or these patterns are continuously running through my family. And now I have the awareness of that. Does that make sense? I now want to touch on the difference and differentiate between intensity and security. Because, like I touched on earlier, for so many of us who grew up around unstable and chaotic love, we equate intensity with security. And so I think it's very important that we have a conversation where we differentiate the two, because they are two very different things. So, intensity. Intensity feels like jealousy, inconsistency, hot and cold behavior, drama, emotional highs and lows. Okay? So, one way that I hear it described to me a lot is, people will tell me, oh, when me and my partner are good, things are great. But when we're bad, things are terrible. There's that inconsistent behavior, there's that hot and cold, there's that drama, there's the roller coaster going on. Whereas with security, what security looks like and feels like is consistency, emotional availability, clear communication, stability, and reliability. Okay? And again, if we look at the list of those two different things and we just kind of go over that, I'm hoping that for all of us, we can see the difference and we can recognize, like, okay, there is a difference between intensity and security, and intensity does not equal security in relationships. Okay? And I want to throw out there that if you are someone who does associate intensity with love, security honestly might feel boring, foreign, or even threatening to you. And so, again, as always, folks, when you're listening to these episodes, if anything resonates, please don't shame yourself. So again, if you are someone that associates intensity with love, I don't want you shaming yourself. No. I want you to gain awareness around, okay, why do I, equate those two things together? Or why does calm, secure love feel threatening to me? Instead of blaming, let's get curious with ourselves. I want to touch on something that a few of you have shared with me in my DMs, and it's very common to happen, and so I just want to normalize this happening for those of us, again, who have grown up in chaotic and emotionally unstable homes. And so that topic or that question is, why does the nice guy give me the ick? Or why does the nice girl give me the ick? And so again, the reason that these things may be happening, or the reason that, the nice guy or nice girl might be giving you the ick, is because your system equates love with having to work hard to gain approval, emotional confusion, walking on eggshells around your partner, and unpredictability. And with all of that, a regulated partner can feel unfamiliar, not unattractive. Does that make sense? Because again, attraction changes when your nervous system heals. Meaning, over time, the more awareness that you have on your patterns, the more awareness of how you're showing up in your relationships and what types of partners you are seeking out, over time, you are going to change the type of partners that not only you are attracted to, but also the partners that you are attracting for yourself. Okay? And you guys know me, I'm so big on grace and self compassion. And because, like I said, we've been weaving in these past few episodes together to create this big picture. I want to make sure that I'm touching on the topic of self sabotage, okay? Because this is not self sabotage. And it's not that you choose wrong, it's honestly that your body is choosing what it's recognizing or what it recognizes, okay? Your body is choosing what is familiar to it. And I hate saying this out loud, folks, but familiar doesn't always equal healthy. Familiar doesn't always equal safe. And safety doesn't always equal familiar. Your healing begins when you start to separate your body's memories from your present reality. So again, your healing begins when you start to give your nervous system the acknowledgement and recognition that, like, hey, you're not here self-sabotaging me, but rather you're just kind of seeking out what's normal or what has worked for me in the past. And so the more awareness we build around that, it becomes easier for us to then change our present reality, change how we're showing up in our present reality. All right, folks, let's go ahead and shift the conversation now to talking about how we can begin to rewire our nervous system so that way we can begin to feel and experience safety in still moments or in calm moments. Okay? First step with that is being able to practice moments of non-reactivity. So practicing things such as slow and deep breathing, learning and implementing grounding exercises, letting someone sit with you in silence. They don't even need to figure out or solve the problem, but just allowing them to be with you in those moments of stillness and noticing your discomfort without running. A big tip that I usually tell my clients for this, when they begin to feel and experience uncomfortable feelings, I typically tell them to just kind of speak out loud or whisper to themselves, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm safe. And just repeat that to yourself over and over again. Okay? And I want to clarify that your goal is not to calm down, but rather the goal is to teach your body that stillness and calm and peace does not equal danger. Step 2, start small. I am a big, big advocate for baby steps. Okay? And that applies here. Start with small things, such as learning how to accept compliments without deflecting. Let someone help you. Say thank you instead of I got it. And notice when you begin to shrink around care, when you begin to shrink in your relationships. Okay? And here's something that not a lot of people talk about that I am currently having to learn and work on. Receiving is a skill, meaning it takes practice and repetition in order for you to be comfortable utilizing that skill. So again, if you were not raised in a household where it was normal for you to receive, or you were not witnessing the women around you receive and do it normally and gracefully, you're not really going to know how to do that. And so that's why I'm saying start small, baby steps. Okay? Because again, being able to receive help and guidance, or really anything, is a skill that I know for many of us, we need to be reminded to practice. Step 3, learn how to tell your body things. Okay? So tell your body things such as, this is not the same experience as before. I am safe to experience healthy love. And I'm allowed to expand beyond survival. The body believes repetition, not logic. And so, again, if you are someone that really resonates with affirmations, please make sure that you are practicing the affirmations that I am sharing in these podcast episodes, because they are going to be a part of the things that are going to help you and help us be able to rewire some of those thought patterns that you've been experiencing. Step 4. So choose nervous system compatibility, meaning start to look for partners who offer things such as clear communication, consistency, emotional responsibility, self awareness, transparency, and no mixed signals, meaning you know exactly where you stand with this person. Here's the kicker though, your body will resist this person at first. And that is very normal. Because one thing that I always remind my clients of is this person that you are entering this healthy relationship with or healthy connection with, they are going to trigger your wounds before they soothe them. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that because that's just information for us to work off of. Now, let's shift into some journal prompts. First one is, where in my body do I feel discomfort when someone is consistent with me? Question two, what did love look like in my childhood home and how did it make me feel? Number three, what qualities in people feel threatening to me even though they're healthy qualities? Number four, what patterns do I repeat in relationships that mirror my upbringing? And last question, who in my life makes me feel emotionally safe? And how does my body respond to them? As always, if you want to go ahead and write those down in a journal, do so. If you want to just kind of sit and reflect on each one, that's fine too. For those of you who really resonate with affirmations, here's your weekly dose. Safe love is not boring. I am allowed to receive the kind of love that I never saw growing up. Consistency is safe for me. My body is learning that peace is not danger. I am worthy of stability, softness, and emotional presence. My nervous system is unlearning survival and choosing safety. And lastly, healthy love is my new normal. So, as I had mentioned in last week's episode, I love butterfly tapping, okay? And the reason I'm bringing butterfly tapping up again in this week's episode is because I recognize that with us talking about relationship patterns, with us talking about putting a lens on our own patterns and how we show up, I recognize that it can bring up some feelings, maybe even some distressing feelings, okay? And so if at any point that you feel like you need a grounding tool, butterfly tapping is amazing. So for those of you who weren't here last week, for butterfly tapping, I want you to just go ahead, cross your hands over your chest, almost like you're giving yourself a hug. And if you're able to, go ahead and rest your fingertips on the tops of your shoulders or on your collarbones. Okay? And while you're basically from here, what you're going to do is you're just going to slowly start to tap left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay? And go ahead and do this for as long as it takes for that emotion to subside. As we close out, folks, I just want to remind you guys that your nervous system is not working against you. It's protecting the version of you who had no choice but to survive. So if there are still old patterns or still ways that you are showing up that you are trying to work through, or maybe that you're not too proud of, you know, please don't blame yourself, but rather extend grace and compassion and let yourself know that, again, your nervous system, your body is just using the coping mechanisms and the things that have helped keep you around and alive. If this episode resonated with you, like I always say, please be kind and gentle with yourself. Being on a healing journey, it requires us to look at things and to look at our own patterns. And I just ask that you try to guide yourself with love, compassion, and empathy, and look at your patterns through a lens of grace and not a lens of shame or judgment. Send this to another woman that you know is doing the inner work, someone that you know might be struggling to feel safe in her new healthy relationships. Leave a comment or DM me so I can know what you thought and we can continue this conversation afterwards. Thank you so much for being here, folks. As I get back into the swing of making new episodes and just really kind of getting back into my norm, I just want to say thank you again for the patience, for still being here, and just know that this year, 2026, I have some very exciting things coming up for Soulful Wahina. Until next time, sis, mahalo and aloha.